The opening game today, England beating Iran by 6 goals to 2. An impressive performance from the English, especially the youngsters. Bellingham was fantastic. Saka getting a brace. Sterling getting on the score sheet as well. Rashford and Jack Grealish coming off the bench to get a goal as well. Naden...
All right, you're the man.
Naden, overall, apart from conceding those 2 goals, this was pretty perfect, wasn't it, from Gareth Southgate's side?
Yeah, I'd like to think so. I think when you look at the fact that most of the goal scorers were scoring for the first time at a World Cup, and you see the youth of them, the excitement of a Jude Bellingham being out there, having a big impact, Saka getting 2 goals, you know, it was good to see for them. And I think when you look at the Iran side, they obviously aren't a great side, but I think England made them look particularly poor. I think overall they defended pretty well. And in terms of possession, like 700 passes in a World Cup game is great. The chances they had, they're great. And they kept it going. And I think one thing which was really shining through was when it was time to make some changes. They're bringing on Phil Foden, Jack Grealish, Callum Wilson off the bench. You know, these are people who can make a big difference further along in this tournament. So I think, again, when you talk about England, some people are kind of trying to normalize scoring 6 goals in a World Cup game, and that definitely is not the case. So I think it's a very, very positive performance. It's a great start, and for some of the people who thought, you know, Gareth Southgate would go for a 5 at the back, he'd be really defensive, well, it appears that that's not the case this time. He went out there, wanted to win the game, won the game well, and obviously the 2 goals being conceded do matter, but you'll take it when your team scores 6, and there's reason to be cheerful if you're of an England persuasion.
Well, when you think of reasons to be cheerful, you think Craig Burley.
Well, what do you want me to say?
Well, I don't know. What is your take on this?
You're expecting me to go down the route of, well, Iran were just garbage.
I'm not.
And what I would say is England made them look bad. Iran, if you look at the historical results in World Cup, they've not won many games, but they've actually made it difficult for a lot of teams. A lot of good, particularly European teams, like Portugal, I think, and Germany. And they've been hard to beat. They certainly were not that today. And I think the added edge for me, and one of the things that I'm hearing from my Iranian contact, was that, well, it was a bit of a strange team, left one of the key playmakers out, the midfielders, and the other thing was that the players didn't want Carlos Queiroz back. Right. That's the things that are kind of coming out. And it looked a little bit that way in their performance. But from an England perspective, it's not the only reason they played well, but I think the fact that Calvin Phillips has had this injury problem at City, and he normally plays in there alongside Rice, and it's 2 solid guys sitting. I think the fact that Bellingham was in there, OK, they're going to play stronger teams than Iran, I understand. But the fact that Bellingham's in there, and he's making runs, he's doing the job of an old midfielder. He's not saying, I'm an attacking midfielder, I'm a defensive midfielder. He's a dynamic midfielder. And I think that just gives England a little bit extra to go and support that front 4.
We knew he was good, but then to put in this sort of performance, obviously the opening goal a bit special as well. What do you like about him, Frank?
Everything. His commitment to the team, you know, he does what he has to do, and he does extra. That's where you appreciate a player. You know, there is the function, and you have the extra function, and he does that, and he pleased me a lot during that game, because I saw everything I want to see from a midfield player. And but I like England overall, because the way they started the game with the pace that they wanted to give to the game, willing to go forward against a good Iran team the first like 10-15 minutes, well organized and everything. I thought it would be more difficult than that. They scored that goal. And then Iran trying to react, and it was open door, you know? and it'd been smashed back. And as I said before, England finished the game, and there were no game half-time. And everybody did the job. You know, even the substitute, when they came on, Wilson has a chance to score a goal. He plays his first game in a World Cup and give an assist to Grealish. And that's the spirit we want to see. That's the spirit I've never seen with England. I have to say that I always had issues with England spirit, because clubs were more important than the national team. And I really feel that this year, I don't know, there is something happening. Because of that game, maybe, it has to be confirmed against the United States.
Yes.
But everything are all green lights right now.
One of the things with Bellingham is that, for me, a lot of facets of his game are good, but they're very noticeable. The one thing I really like about him, particularly for a young player, kind of like Lampard in his heyday, and in some sense Dele Alli a little bit, before he fell off a cliff was that Bellingham's ability to time his run into the box was epitomised by his first goal. He didn't get in there too early. And I think that's a skill set that a lot of people don't talk about. People just like, run in the box. No. Finding the space, where the centre-halves are, where the striker's making the run, timing your run. And I think Bellingham, certainly in England, is as good as anybody at the moment at making those runs, finding that space. The question will be when England get to the knockouts, and they will, and the opponents are a lot stronger, be it an elite nation, will he go back, Gareth Southgate, to the two?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Sorry, but I jump on what he said. It's because Kane makes those runs, without the ball, that allows Jude Bellingham to go into it. If Jude Bellingham plays in a team where all three don't move and they are stuck, he's not going to offer that.
And there's no second striker.
Yes.
So there's a point when if the guys are wide providing, you need that extra man to come in the box. And if he's not doing it because of a conservative approach where you have two holding midfielders, then you're asking either Sterling, who's either providing, or Saka to come all the way inside. Well, at the far post maybe, but where are you getting that second runner in the box? And when you have somebody that's willing to do that, you mentioned Frank. Nobody was better than Frank for a period of time.
I was waiting on that list: Frank Lampard, Dele Alli, and a young Craig Burley.
Well,
I thought that was what was going to.
I was going to throw in a David Platt, which
that would be sensible.
Nathan, looking at it as well, great after what happened in the final for Saka to come out and score 2 goals in the World Cup opener. A nice touch.
Yeah, for sure, and Rashford as well. That shouldn't be forgotten. I think this is a very significant moment for them because the way that Euros ended last year, it was a very sour note for a lot of people. And then even going through the summer with some of the defeats that they had, you could sense there was a bit of pressure piling on the players and the manager. But lo and behold, it's those players, those exciting players, that really set the tone for England. And talking about England and being exciting isn't something that people get used to. They're more so used to sort of being critical about why they're so defensive. They're not really achieving their potential. But today we've got a chance to see that. And I think for them, the upside is, for the games that are to come against possibly better opposition, they know they've got this in the locker, but they can also drift back to the stuff which made them semi-successful over the last 2 tournaments. This is a side that made it to the semi-finals of the last World Cup. They made it to the final of the European Championships. And there are lots of familiar faces within that setup that know essentially how to try and go about their business at this stage. And realistically, this isn't something we ever really talk about when it comes to England. I think this is a very significant generation of players. And I like it. The fans seem to get behind them. And as Frank was saying there, you can see the spirits there. When they have the spirit and the quality to both attack together and defend together, they make them a very dangerous side. And as far as matchups go in any given game, anything is possible for them, I'd say.
Gareth Southgate, I think you could expect what he was going to say. Yeah, great performance, but we shouldn't have conceded 2 goals. What went wrong?
Well, again, we pointed the fact that defensively the English team weren't prepared. And even if I have to say that Maguire was very interesting, Stones as well when they had the ball, because Stones played almost as a midfielder. That was very nice to put the pressure on Iran. But the goal they conceded, especially the first goal, Maguire is there with the guy, allows the guy to go behind him, but Stones doesn't cover. Right. He has to be closer. They have to work together. They have to work on that together because that's an easy goal to avoid. Really, defensively, that's something you have to work on that because they were uncovering each other, Stones in that case. It's not a perfect world, and they have to work on that. Right. Otherwise, they're going to be punished against any other opponent.
Imagine they're going in the dressing room though. You've just scored 6 goals in a World Cup game. And if you've heard your manager moaning about the 2 goals you lost, you'd be like, "Hey, Gaffer, have a day off, will you? We'll just give you 6. We could have lost to Iran."
And one of them a penalty in the 99th minute.
At the end of the game, to concede 2 goals the way we did isn't the level we need. We're going to have to be better than we were today in some aspects of the game against the USA because they're going to be coming at us full throttle and we're going to have to reset. Now, what's interesting from that is the way that these 2 games finished. England had a lot of fresh faces on the pitch. It almost had a pre-season friendly feel to it in the way that he could bring on a lot of players. Your guys on the floor, cramping up, injuries.
And England could come on to Nedum's point and score a goal after 71 seconds of being on the pitch. Yeah. And then, just looking like it was almost carnival atmosphere and full of energy because it was too easy, right? And, you know, the U.S. guys obviously not having the response they would like, not being able to change what Wales were doing for the first 25 minutes of that first half, or sorry, of that second half. And it is going to be a different psyche going in. Now, the question for England will be, is there too much overconfidence coming in because you just crushed Iran and we're got a +4 goal difference and we're already through, and do we really have to, you know, give the same effort that we did in that first half against Iran? And then the other question is, how wounded are the U.S.?
Right. Yeah.
Are there key players that are just banged up after that second half? Because it was a physical match.
Yeah, indeed. Well, to that point, Nathan, obviously front and back pages of the newspapers in the UK are all dominated now by the Six Pistols and everything. They're going to be getting excited, but you're very much detached from that quite a lot now, aren't you, in this England camp? And a bit of overconfidence can't be too much of a bad thing?
I think, to be honest, with the way this squad is, I think they are realistic. I think Gareth Southgate is trying to send a message about that, and the fact that he's sort of being critical of the team about the 2 goals. Maybe in private he's praising them, but he's trying to make sure that he's showing to the nation and to the fans that, you know, they are taking this seriously. And this US side, you know, they can cause some problems because they do have speed, and speed itself is something which, you know, doesn't matter how good you are as a player, like that will always be a concern for the opposition. So I think for England in that game, they'll understand it's going to be a different sort of task. And it's a big game, especially given the fact that the USA are on 1 point. They probably need a result from that. So they're going to get the best version of the United States team. And for England, they'll know they'll have to suffer a little bit in that game, but they have to be clinical and similar in the way that they were today. And I think, you know, for people watching the games today, you'll think, well, England are going to walk all over them, but I don't believe that to be the case at all. It's always different when there's always something on the line. So I believe for England, if they stick to their plan, if they play anywhere near as well as they've done, then they'll be okay. But it won't be them scoring 6 goals because this is an exception. And they'll be ready for that game. They'll be motivated and understand if you win this, you are into the next round of the competition. And that is your objective. So why wouldn't you take the opportunity to do it now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think knowing, you know, Southgate's quite a level-headed, he's a very level-headed guy. And I don't think they'll be paying any attention to headlines, or I'm sure the players are reading a few of them on their phone, but they're old enough and wise enough to know that they were expected to win this game. It went better than expected. Okay, they lost a couple of silly goals at the end, but yeah, the US just provide a different test. The worry is, as Casey mentioned, it's got to be the match fitness for some of these players, because they have one of the youngest squads in the tournament.
Yeah,
they should be fresh-faced and
yes,
you know, still battering away at the end. But it was a physical game, but they were on the floor, and there'll be ice packs galore. And how do you pick them up? Because England are buoyant. If England have got 5 or 6 knocks, they bring 5 or 6 players in.
Yeah.
The US have got 2 or 3 they could bring in that could maybe keep the quality to a certain level, but not 5 or 6.
Final question, Nate. Am I supposed to say one I asked Sebi? How is he as a roommate?
Well, interestingly, so I came a day later than Sebi. So when I walked into the room, he'd both taken the big room and gone into my room and left his, I think it's his boxer shorts and some exercise equipment in there. So I was like, well, where am I supposed to be? But ultimately, I was like, okay, fair enough, Sebi, you do whatever you want. But he's a little bit messy, but he's a nice guy. So yeah, things are good. And I don't think I got the worst assignment anyway, so I'm quite happy.
It's only 2 days in, though, isn't it?
Hey,
everyone's being nicey at the moment.
I love how he's been like a little poodle and he's gone in and left his scent in each room.
But take care of him, because it seems to be very frustrating.
Nathan, you seem to be suggesting there are worse people you could be rooming with. Who would you suggest that would be?
Yeah. So the person that's suffering the most is probably Julien Laurent, because it's with Mark Ogden, and Mark Ogden is single-handedly the most unhappy man in all of the world. So just picture waking up to that and hearing that for the whole day. You know, there is no shit. It's too hot. It's too cold. The days are too long. Everything's too short. Only 6 goals. There should be 7. Just imagine that for 5 weeks.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. This is much more interesting than the World Cup.
You got to come back to this like in the semi-final.
Yeah, I know. Imagine it.
And see.
Although Sebi's staying as long as the US, Casey, so I don't know.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.